Newsletters are all the rage. And, of course, our friend Matt Brown from Extra Points, the newsletter, which I use extensively. If for those people out there who also love it, there is a questionnaire for users so they can maybe add things that you want to hear more of. So go to the newsletter and fill out the questionnaire. Matt Brown joins us on the Adam Gold Show. I gave your plug for you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate that. I'm still in the process right now of trying to recover. I think actually after spending some time not far from your neck of the woods. I am of the age where if I eat cookout 3 times in a 3-day period, my body, very, very subtly lets me know, my brother, right. You're almost 40. You cannot do this anymore. So we're drinking a lot of vegetable smoothies and hitting the gym today.
Dude, I'm way older than you. I was just at a cookout yesterday on the way back from my son's soccer match. Real quick, you were up in Boone. The pictures give it away right away. I know you love the city. I love the city. If you have not been to Boone on football Saturdays are amazing. I've been to a football Saturday, but also a Thursday night, especially if they're playing a rival like Georgia Southern. But a Thursday night for an app game is just awesome. My favorite football town, and we have great ones here. My favorite football town in the Southeast is Boone.
I definitely understand now why so many reporters and so many fans are so effusive in praises of the place. I would love to be able to cover a game there. I'm not sure exactly how you would handle traffic.
That's a problem.
To get 25, 30,000 people in that stadium.
Yeah.
But the views, the hospitality, the uniqueness of the whole thing. I think if I was somebody like Marshall or James Madison coming to play there on a Thursday night, and I say this with love, I think I would be terrified. That does not sound like a fun place to be as a visitor. But if you're just going on a random Sunday and want to look around, gorgeous.
Yep, it is a tremendous town. And if you go to the Daniel Boone Inn, you will feel very similar to when you leave the Cookout drive-thru. Great spot at the Daniel Boone Inn. All right, I reached out last week. You had a great piece about Virginia Tech and a slideshow, a presentation that they gave recently about the new way that the ACC will divide revenue. And I'm just going to ballpark this, and then we'll kind of dig into it. Virginia Tech came to the realization that they have to win football games in order to get more money, because they need to be on TV more and they need to be on network TV more. We don't have to go back that far where Virginia Tech was the darling of Thursday night football. They arguably made ESPN Thursday night football. It's been a long time since Virginia Tech was that good. But what was your takeaway from those slide presentations?
That was a pretty significant takeaway, honestly. The idea when you get booked on network television is not 100% based on how successful you are that season. We only have to look at Florida State last year. I think to be reminded of that, but it does play a significant part, as does what kind of games are you scheduling out of conference, what kind of time slots are you being scheduled in, and then what kind of sidewalk fan base have you built. I think that's part of what was interesting about Virginia Tech during the mid-'90s up until about 2010, 2011, is that was a team that was cool and one that people were emotionally invested in, even if you weren't from Southern Virginia. And over the last, 8 years, with the team mostly being pretty average, and not only average, but kind of boring, that disappears. Just like now, I think that there are people that have never been to the state of Oregon that are going to tune in to watch Oregon. Yeah. There's going to be people that I think are going to, that may feel that way about UNC this year, depending on how good they are. But if you're good 5, 6, 7 years in a row, or you're especially interesting, like Colorado, you're going to get preferential treatment. And if you can't rest on those laurels, or else you end up like Nebraska or Minnesota, if you aren't producing that value year in and year out.
Matt Brown, Extra Points, is joining us here in the Adam Gold Show at Matt Brown EP. Here's the thing. I said in the chart you had with, Clemson and Florida State have been 1 or 2 over the last, I think it was 7 years. I think you went back 7 years in terms of television ratings. Miami has been third across the board. I would argue that if Miami ever returned to Miami, that they would be one in the ACC. They are a national television show. A vintage Miami outfit would be, I think, better than anybody else in terms of drawing television eyeballs for TV ratings. But you expressed some surprise when you saw Georgia Tech fourth, and this speaks to something I think you just said, and that sometimes it's the matchup. Because I can point to three exactly Georgia Tech games, right? The opener against Florida State, which had all the eyeballs in Dublin, Ireland, which they won. The mid-season game, an upset over Miami. And then the last game where they should have beaten Georgia. So you had three high-profile games that probably elevated it over everybody else in their little, bunch of ACC teams.
That it's funny. That was exactly it. And I actually talked to somebody at ESPN after I published that, who said, like, yeah, that's basically what happened. And some of the Georgia Tech's games that were on the ACC network or not scored were
right.
Kind of lined up correctly with the calendar, so they weren't penalized too much. And I actually think this is important, and it's something that Virginia Tech understands. But you can't just optimize your football schedule to try and stack as many easy wins as possible. And I look at what somebody like Indiana is doing right now. They just canceled their series with Virginia. They are going out of their way to say, like, we are going to not play anybody before Big Ten play. Like, right. I think this year it's like Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and an FCS team. With the thinking that if we, then can go win 9-10 games, we're going to find our way into the playoffs. That might work for a little while longer. But for Indiana's case, I think as the novelty of competent Indiana goes away, you can't go to your season ticket holders and say the second best game that you're going to get to see is Minnesota, because we decided to completely flush half of your home ticket slate down the toilet.
Right.
If you are a school in the ACC, I can understand the thought, like, hey, if we play, three high school teams and a YMCA squad, our chances of winning 10 games goes up. But if you go out and you schedule somebody that's actually good, you'll be on national television. And not only will that help you with your ACC television revenue distribution, you're going to sell more tickets.
Yeah.
You're going to sell more beers. You're going to sell more parking spaces. We can't let coaches completely dictate this. It has to be done holistically.
Matt Brown from Extra Points is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. What was the difference? I know you came up with figures, and I'm just trying to remember what they were. It was like in the low $60 million range that Clemson and Florida State, and I think North Carolina will be at the top of this, especially coming off this year in football, because they're going to be everybody's fascination across the country because of Bill Belichick. But what was the high end? What was the low end in terms of the revenue gap, in terms of estimates?
Well, I mean, if we're looking at between, over the coming decade between the Big Ten and the SEC and some schools in the ACC, we're looking at annual conference distribution differences north of $25 million a year. And then there's some pretty significant spending just operationally within the conference itself. And this is the thing that Virginia Tech was particularly trying to point to their board, saying, like, look, we are, depending on the metric, every year in the ACC, we are either 8th or 9th in public school athletic department spending, period. We're at, around $130 million as a department. And Clemson is Notre Dame are close to doubling us up. But we're also behind Georgia Tech. We're behind Virginia. We're behind Pitt. And I think this is a really difficult thing for everybody in this conference, and I think for kind of peer institutions, elsewhere in this market. What we're seeing here is an athletic budget crunch with revenue sharing and with increased construction costs and labor costs happening at the exact same time that major R1 research universities are facing massive financial clawbacks from the cancellation of federal research grants. So that makes this an especially difficult time to go to your board of visitors or your board of regents and say, we need an extra $20 million. but it's also the time when you really need that extra $20 million. And it's not like Florida, it's not like Virginia Tech can just up and move to Dallas or something, or a bigger television market. So the revenue pressures on everybody, but especially the non-Florida State Clemson people, I think, in this league are very strong. If you have a great idea how to raise more MMR money, like Bubba Cunningham wants to talk to you today.
Well, we're going to talk to Bubba Cunningham next week, and I have a suggestion for him, and it was cool to see, and I found this out through at Matt Brown EP on Twitter. Virginia Tech is putting, they're selling, ad space basically on their field. And I have sort of jokingly said that if I were at UNC, I would sell 10-yard increments of my field to as many companies as would be willing to put their logo and their colors, like from the 10-yard line to the goal line, Subway. And it would be that kind of a hideous green and yellow thing going on. And then it would be Domino's from the 10 to the 20. I would anything I could do to sell more revenue, including jersey, ads on everything. I mean, you got to find it somewhere.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that proposal is not allowed.
Should be.
There's NCAA bylaws now that state exactly what units you're allowed to sell on a football field. I know it's interesting you mentioned this though, because I was actually on the phone working on a story about this very thing before I called here. And everybody in the country is trying to sell logos on their football field. But what I can tell you, what is happening right now is that market across the country has been much smaller than multimedia rights partners and athletic directors had hoped. And part of that is because it's pretty expensive, and there's just not that many firms that have the capacity to do it, and a lot of them are already spending money on football sponsorships.
Right.
And because the need for revenue is so high, nobody wants to let that kind of real estate go, for $200,000 just to get some cash in the board, because they're worried that then they won't be able to sell it for much more later on. So, we shouldn't be surprised to see multiple Power 4 teams or multiple big G5 teams want to sell that space and not get it. Right. I can also tell you everybody wants to sell jersey patches right now. And that is actually going to be more valuable real estate, in my opinion, than what's on the field. The holdup isn't the NCAA so much as it is Nike and Adidas, who are going to say, we paid a lot of money to be the only company on those uniforms here. Like hell, we're going to let Cheerwine have a patch next to ours.
How about Cookout? Then we could have the shake of the day.
Unironically, I'll spoil this here. I'm probably going to write something early next week about who would be a legitimately plausible jersey sponsor for every FBS team. And if I'm ECU, I'm calling Cookout and I'm calling Cheerwine first. UNC's probably a little bit too expensive for them, but knowing what I know about Greenville, with deep love in my heart, what place is more Greenville than the place that's open at 2:00 in the morning for $8 and is there for you? That's Cookout.
You could
I'd slap it on there.
You could do the quesadilla times 4 in a tray.
I believe that's called a Raleigh lasagna.
Oh man, you're the best, Matt Brown at Matt Brown EP from Extra Points. Thank you so much for the time, man. I look forward to that. I can't wait to see that write up.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. We'll be in touch soon.
You got it. Matt Brown from Extra Points is joining us here